So please gently settle into your sitting. Let your spine relax upward. Feel your sit bones carrying your weight. Gently breathe in and out. In the age-old tradition that the Buddha began when he simply sat down under a tree and waited, allowed things to be how they are. And let himself to be how he was. And here we are, sitting together in the practice that he gave us. Our bodies are water, moving with the ocean tides. Our bodies are matter, hungering for the feel of the earth underfoot. Each is a cousin of the microbes in the soil, a relative of the bur oaks up the hill. Water that moves in the air, flows in and out, rises and swells like ocean tides, flows from high places to low, bubbles over rocks, thunders down from the sky, carves a new path through the soft earth and even through rock. That water is our birth, our home. Each body is multitudes. 39 trillion microbes among 30 trillion cells. That alone must give pause to any dream of independence. This body is earth. That means vast reaches of space. Electrons, atoms, molecules spinning and somehow held together. The mystery of solid matter that is merely bits of energy. I mean to speak of earth, minerals, substance, gravity, what we recognize as home. This body belongs here. Winds blow through, tides move, earth holds. Some spark of awareness makes its home in this one body called mine, and these bodies we call ours. Seeing each other, we create each other. We are no more separate than left hand from right. So breathing quietly together for a while longer. So I'll just say good evening and thank you for coming out in this weather and these roads. And if anybody would like to move closer in, that would be fine with me. And
can people hear Shodo? Is the volume good enough? Good.
okay.
My name is Rob. Make sure that you didn't leave any valuables in the out there. Bring them inside the room because the door is unlocked, so people can come and take things. Welcome, Shodo. It's my pleasure to introduce her. When Gabe asked me if I would introduce her a few weeks ago, I said yes. And what Gabe didn't know is that I remembered practicing at Minnesota Zen Center 30 years ago. We were both studying with Shohaku Okumura, and I remembered the name. So it was a lucky coincidence. So Shodo discovered the Dharma in 1983 at Minnesota Zen Center with Katagiri Roshi, lucky enough to study with him. And then she also studied at the San Francisco Zen Center. And you might have guessed already, just by looking at her, that she's a Zen priest. Her ordination name means right way or true path. Her unique path integrates political activism with spiritual practice and a deeply nourishing engagement and commitment to the earth, to protecting and caring for the earth. In 2006, she walked the Texas-Mexican border, and in 2013, she led her own compassionate earth walk. It was a 3-month hike along the Keystone XL pipeline. So she walks her talk. She's the founder of Mountains and Water Alliance. She lives on a 17-acre farm about an hour south of her here. She's a grandmother, a retired psychotherapist, and the editor of a book by Shohaku Okumura on Dogen. She's also a blogger, an essayist, and an author of 2 books. She wrote a book a long time ago called Take Up Your Life, Making Spirituality Work in the Real World. And then her most recent book, which she has copies here tonight, is called Open Reality. Open Reality, Meeting the Pali Crisis Together with All Beings. I find that she is a much needed voice in these times, in these very dark times. I find that she's a little bit like a prophet, a visionary, an original thinker. If we are to make meaningful climate change, we need to think outside of the box. And she does, her book does just that. I'll resist name dropping, but there is a chorus of Buddhist praises on the dust jacket of the book. And I'll cite just 2 of those praises. And it was fun to read all of the accolades. Roshi Joan Halifax writes, "We need the wisdom of Shodo's deep practice and insight in the times we are facing." And I'm sure most of you recognize Bhikkhu Bodhi. He said, "This book of beautiful contemplative reflections offers keen insights into the deep underlying roots of the convoluted network of crises we face." So please join me in maybe putting your hands together to welcome Shodo Spring this evening.
Okay, hi. Well, thank you. That was a lot of an introduction. Let's see. So I thought I would start by talking about how this came to be, and then I'll sort of overview some of the things that are in there, and then we'll see what time it is. I like the discussion and conversation afterwards, so we'll have lots of time for that. So first, somewhere around 2003 or 4, I noticed there was a problem with climate change. Richard Heinberg was talking about it, and I heard him speak, and I went, oh. And I noticed that I had a commitment to do something about that. I have said I have a vow to stop climate change. Now, there's a thing about vows, and it's not that you're guaranteed that you can accomplish them, but it's that you organize your life around them. So I noticed that I had this vow a few years later, and I thought about, well, what I knew. I had taken a permaculture class, and I had learned things, like a lot of things, about how to change the climate, how you create a microclimate. Well, how to make that bigger, there's more work being done on that. But in my 2-week introductory course, it became clear to me that we didn't need new technology, that we needed to be willing to use the technology and the knowledge that we already had. And so I said, okay, what we need is consciousness change. And at that time, I was in training as a Zen priest. And I said, oh, I'm in the right profession. Consciousness change is my profession. So I continued my training. And in my spare time, I got involved with various local activism in Bloomington, Indiana, and then later, wherever I was in other places. But during the time from, maybe 2006 till now, it has become increasingly aware that consciousness change is a harder thing than I ever imagined. And I certainly get discouraged. And there's a way of talking about this book that would be that it's speaking to my own discouragement, and it's offering something else. It's offering another option. So what's in here? First, the first part of the book kind of describes the world as I see it. And I know I didn't always see it that way. I think it's a result of practice. The second part of the book is a direct result of a lot of reading, history, anthropology, archaeology. And I will mention a few stories that give me encouragement. But what I learned in brief is that human beings are not fundamentally evil. Sure, we have greed, hate, and delusion. They're there. But I hear a lot of environmentalists, and I have for years, say how much better off the world would be if we weren't here. I hear them say humans are the problem and human nature is the problem. And so I'm here to give the lie to that. And I can read lots of stuff or I can tell lots of stories, depending on what people ask for. But I'm going to say it's not true. Our ancestors did much better than we're doing. And so I followed the course through history, and goes back for a while, a couple thousand years. And at one point, I remembered who it was that started the problem, and now I've forgotten. I looked up something else instead, but I didn't look that up. But I can talk a little bit about what happened from the Middle Ages to the present. And I'll just outline that. I have to talk about Europe. I have read things from other people. They all seem more wise than we are. But what happened in Europe is we moved from a way of living that was full of mystery, full of spirits, animism, pantheism, whatever of those, which my teachers in school said were the most primitive forms of spirituality, and monotheism was the best. That we moved out of those, and we moved towards rationalism. We moved towards a religious-like faith in something known as science. And that thing known as science has to do with control and with being able to wrest answers out of the natural world. And we praise this. We discuss the Renaissance, and we think it's a good thing. Having looked a little bit into the time, what they used to call the Dark Ages, and now they admit they weren't so bad. We don't have knowledge about them, and so we projected bad things on them. It is true that the church was a problem. It's also true that some of the solutions, I don't know if I can say they were worse or not, but they brought us to where we are now, which is a civilization, so-called, in which it is thought that human beings are the pinnacle of evolution, and that if there's a problem, we should do more of the same. And so, we've got some alternative energy now. And so what do? We burn twice as much energy. We have to have AI, we have to have self-driving cars. Whose idea was all this? Capitalism gets involved. I did not do a thorough study of capitalism, but I did look into some aspects of it. So then I asked the question, what on earth can we do, given that we are where we are? One of the things that I found is that, it's possible that I'm a visionary, but it's also possible that there are hundreds or thousands of people who are going the same way, and a lot of them are ahead of me. I've studied with people, I've wished I had time to study with people who know enormous, vast, wonderful things about the way the universe works. One example that I did not look up, I think the anthropologist's name was Lawrence van der Kolk, but I could be wrong. And it was the San people, who used to be called the Kung San. And they were originally famous because they walked on fire, not to get high, not for mystical experiences, but because whatever it was that they did to walk on fire was how they healed people. Anyway, so he studied them according to his lights, and they studied him. And when they found out that he couldn't hear the stars sing, they felt really sorry for him. He couldn't hear the stars. So there have been some people, some Western European, whatever, some non-indigenous writers who have looked into various civilizations like that. And there have been some lovely voices from people from those societies themselves who have learned enough, either English or Spanish, to forcefully express their point of view. And they have a few things to say about our civilization that aren't impressive. Now, if I put everything in here that I wanted to, it would be rather large. So what we have here is sort of, it's more than an outline, because I put my own stories into it, and it's like I tried to make it accessible, and then I gave where do you go to get the other pieces. Anyway, so a lot of people who already know this thing that I have been learning, and it's 6 years of my life. I was going to write a book about climate change, and then COVID happened, and then George Floyd was killed, and then certain books were written, and so I was immersed in this whole project for 6 years, while holding down a job and trying to do a few other things. Have a very small Zen group. So where we go after that is, what can we do? And what can we do is the hard part, because it looks hopeless. So I'm going to say a few things about being hopeless. I'm going to remember when George W. Bush went directly, like from one day to the next, from, oh, that's silly, there is no problem. There is no oil problem, there is no climate problem, all of that stuff. And then one day he says, we're addicted to oil, we have a problem. And I cannot quote exactly, but it seemed to me that from refusing to think that anything needed to be done at all, they went right to, well, nothing you can do will do any good, so we might as well forget about our children and grandchildren and just have a good time while we're here. The 20 years since climate change and peak oil and various other things have become public awareness are the 20 years of the fastest growth in consumption, the fastest growth in the difference between the billionaires and the rest of us, and increasing insistence that we cannot live without these things. I grew up in the 1950s in a fairly comfortable, very conventional family, very religious. And I know what it's like to live with one phone, maybe a party line, one car for 8 people. It means grocery shopping happens on Saturday, the same time everybody else is grocery shopping. That's for those of us who had one breadwinner. There were categories in the society that had to have 2 people. But it was most common to have one. And we took one vacation every year, and we could afford to do that. And that vacation didn't involve a lot of long-distance flying. In fact, it never did. It always involved a car. Everybody piled into the station wagon and we went somewhere. There was no internet. There were 3 channels on the television, and there was some radio. There was a newspaper. We got a newspaper every day. And the life I live now, in which I can pull out my cell phone and get directions to wherever I'm going, and they'll usually be right, where all of the information in the world is available to me online, and then a lot of things that aren't true are also available to me online, and it's hard to tell the difference. Where I can spend hours a day reading things, so I have the internet addiction. I would never have imagined that life. And I'm happy that my children didn't grow up with that life. I can't remember how old they were when we got, everyone has the internet. We lived fine. So the things that people think are needs now are not needs. And among us, there are a lot of people who know they're not needs because they don't have them. This morning, I dropped off some food because I had lots, because the food shelf insists that you take a lot, and so there's too much food here. There's a church in Burnsville that was collecting food for some Somali families that I think were members that are afraid to go to the grocery store. And so the church is collecting them and delivering food. So we have extreme wealth and we have extreme brutality. And here we are. See, I left my notes at home. And so when I do that, interesting extra things creep in, like my awareness of, well, in Minnesota, it's about Somali people. Everywhere, it's about anybody who talks back. So I took the politics out of the book, which was finished well before the election that we did not think would happen. So I'm going to say some things from the last part of the book, which is, what on earth do we do? How shall we live in these times? So I started with necessity. We consume too much and we have too many people. And then I added restore the fertility of the earth. Okay, now lots of people have written a lot about that, so I didn't. And the next one, it says there's nobody but us. I mentioned Joanna Macy's The Great Turning. How many people have not heard about this? Oh, okay. So she looks at our time. She's a Buddhist activist who died this fall, I think, very recently. And she calls this time the Great Turning. And her question is, well, what were you doing? What were you doing in the Great Turning? The turning which is away from that kind of frozen, not even death, but kind of not alive way of living, into the fullness of life. And she names 3 things, and they look pretty good to me. One of them she calls stopping actions. If I've got the words wrong, you can tell me. And those people are very visible. We see them well, we're in Minnesota. So we see them up at line 3. And we see them chaining themselves to pipelines. And pretty soon we're going to see them doing something about data centers. And we see them getting arrested and beat up. Stopping actions. Just let it not get any worse. The second group, she says, building the new society. And I live in an area where there's a lot of that growing on. Small farms, sustainable farms, people growing vegetables and selling them to each other, and people learning to do more of the land, and building a culture that is human and humanly connected and is connected to the earth. And that culture, where I live, there are a lot of people who are growing chickens, and there are a lot of people who are growing hogs. It's not a vegan culture. It's a culture that interacts with things and that eats, and that tries to find a way to live sustainably on the earth. And the third group, she just says spirituality. So what I noticed when I was involved in Line 3, and I was somewhat involved at Standing Rock. I went out there for a week. What I see people doing that are doing activism is they are doing 2 or 3 of these things at once. They have people who are going out and standing in front of police, corporations, whatever, and saying no to them. And they have a strong spiritual life. The main thing that I did at Standing Rock was to go and pray at the river every morning. And it changed me in ways that are hard to talk about. And they plant corn. They plant corn in the path of the next pipeline. They plant food. They create life. And so when she said, it's sort of like, it's good enough to do one of these, but what I see is people who are doing all of them. I saw 10-year-old children learning to run a video so they could take pictures of whatever was happening. And I see people doing ceremony. So those 3 aspects work for me. And then I said, well, but how do we get there? So we get there. I wrote Finding the Will is the title of this chapter, and I propose that you remember what wholeness looks like, and you imagine it, and you think about it, and you get together with other people to think about it. What would a day in a real life look like? And keep doing it, keep doing it. What is the world we want to live in? And then you look in your memory and you say, well, what do we already have? And I have a few things from my own memory. I was 20, 21 years old, just married, and I had the in-laws over for a meal. And I was making something that involved cornstarch, and I used baking soda instead. And I was like, there was his whole family sitting there in the living room waiting for me. Finally, and I was not comfortable with any of them, but finally I got help from his mother and made a whole new supper while they all waited. Getting rides from people. I walked through eastern Montana once, and let me tell you, if you are walking, people will stop and check on you because you might be in trouble. And I was like, I would feel safe there. And actually, I was walking with my shaved head and my robes. And people stopped, and sometimes they gave us water, and sometimes they asked if we needed a ride. So we got to talk to a lot of people and tell them what we were up to. Learning in your body what wholeness feels like, what safety feels like. I offered some practices, and I said, again, talk to each other. Recognizing community. And I said, the lasting source fire comes from the life dream and from love. Those of us who build alternative communities are doing real work, bringing the dream into real life in detail. People who volunteer to take meals to elders and the homebound, making human connections, are doing real work. They're making community. There's so many ways to do the right thing, to do the helpful thing. So I have a chapter on recognizing your values, because if you know what your values are, well, for one thing, that helps you implement them. But the other thing, and I know this from my training as a psychotherapist, naming your values strengthens your life force. It helps you to be more the person that you can be. And then I wrote about mending. My friend Martin Bulgarin is an extraordinary healer. Recently he said in a class that was about physical healing using plants, it's not about getting rid of something. It's about finding out who you are in that place. So here we are in a broken society. Who are we in this place? Who are we in the middle of the breaking? So then I just wrote some things about the way reality looks to me, which is consistent with Buddhist teaching. Everything lives us. Everything breathes us into life. Everything witnesses us into being. And we, in turn, live, breathe, and witness them into existence. This is called interdependent co-arising. Things arise and things fall, dependent on each other, linked together irrevocably. We are neither separate nor permanent, but completely embedded in the web of life, with a spark of awareness in this individual being, as in other individual beings. We look out at each other and recognize each other, and this is how we create each other. So this is sometimes called animism. I technically like the term panpsychism, which means everything is conscious and everything is consciousness. And then I said this really outrageous thing. I said, meditation and ritual change the structure of reality. So, and I'm just going to talk about meditation because it takes time to do them both. And I will just say, there are rules that say only the mundane exists and there is no sacred. Do people notice this is going on around you? It's like, usually it's people making fun of the Christians, but they'll make fun of all of us. Those are human rules, and meditation changes them. The rules that say you are alone, the rules that say you are supreme, it changes both of those, the miserable and arrogant versions of isolation. Meditation creates an opening in which everything is open and flexible. Things are allowed to be as they are. Things create each other. In meditation, it's possible to receive the creation of all the other beings of the universe, not just the devas, but the rocks and waters too. It's possible to send out creation into them, to recognize the flow of mutual creation. And then we take our leave from the heightened awareness. In one way or another, we return to the mundane, hopefully carrying some of that consciousness with us. Katagiri Roshi taught us that when we leave the Zendo, we bow to the Zendo that is out there, because the whole world is the Zendo. The whole world is the sacred place. The whole world is the place for spiritual practice. So, here is a suggestion. So this comes from Tejo Munich, who was one of the priests when I was first in the 80s, first at the Zen Center. And she looked things up a lot. And she was looking at a sentence that said the monks were disporting themselves in Zazen. So she looked up disport, and it means play. And she was like, that can't be right. So she got the kanji dictionary and she looked up the characters. There were 2 characters, and both of them meant play. So, disport from a dictionary means to enjoy oneself unrestrainedly, to frolic, to divert or amuse oneself, to play in a carefree way, or to amuse yourself in a light-hearted fashion. Comes from a French word which means to carry away or to entertain. And this happens while we're sitting quietly on a cushion without moving and probably following our breath. But I recognize, I've done enough reading now, it's like I recognize that thing she said. It's like, oh, play. Play is what you do with no goal. Play is a natural expression of the life force. So my teacher, Shohaku Okumura, says, if you're sitting zazen to get enlightened, you're still doing business. And that's why in my school they say zazen is good for nothing. We don't want to do business. We do too much business already. The one wild place that nobody can take away from us is this body and mind, and it is wild. So, let me see. What else is important? Okay. Taking our places, just placing ourselves into this thing, letting ourselves be created. And I will say that I am created as much by that horrible news that I read way too much of as I am by the stars and the trees and the Cannon River and the creeks and the grasses and, I mean, all of those, I rejoice in being created by them, but I refuse to shut my eyes and ears. And so I'm also created by the troubles. I'm created by the fear, I'm created by the difficulties. And so, okay, practices, foundation practices. Sitting is one of them. Community is one of them. Asking for help. So there's that story, which I think is pretty well known, of a boy who is trying to fix his bicycle or something. And he's getting really frustrated, and he's kind of pouting. And his father shows up, and the boy says, "I've tried everything." And the father says, "No, you haven't." The boy says, "What?" I imagine it like this. And the father says, "You haven't asked your father for help." the big thing that we have not done as environmentalists who know all the stuff, we know what's wrong with the way today's society works, we have an idea of how it could be, but are we asking for help from everybody we could ask for help from? So some years ago, I started a practice of asking for help from flowers and trees, stars, the creek and the river, the bluffs. It's sort of easier to do these than it is to ask for human beings to help. This may not be true for everybody, but then when I started talking about asking for help from these other beings, then I got to find out what people thought about it. So that made it harder. So what? Okay. Okay, I'm going to read this little bit here, which I wrote some winter when it was warmer than it is today. In the sunlight and cold, with light glistening off the snow and drops of water falling from icicles, as the figs bear their new hope fruit in the eastern window, today I walked down to the central altar. This is a specific place, to the place where spirits look out from the rock wall. Now, I invented these spirits. I went, oh, that looks like that, and that looks like that. And I was going down practically every day. So the old grandmother was there, with Wolf looking out over her right eye, and the dark meditating woman, and the one on horseback, who then turned into a dancing woman with another ghost-like figure dancing next to her. These come and go, depending on the time of day, how the shadows fall, and perhaps the welcome in my mind. Today, to the right was a large dark shield with a few human faces turned to the east, new to me, and to the left, a standing figure who reminded me of images of Jesus. The crowds were there in the lower center, as usual, looking up toward the larger figures. With tobacco in my bare, cold hand, I spoke a few words. Then I chanted the Daiheshin Dharani of great compassion, the very old magical chant offered daily in Shodo Zen temples around the world. After chanting, we dedicate the merit, the positive energy, to good and worthy causes. I asked for a few things for the lands up north and for those beings here. Just briefly, the bald eagle came by. If you close your eyes, you can feel the energy of land and creek, rocks and bluffs, grasses and red cedar trees, blue sky and snow, all of it together. Okay. I think I'll stop with that. I will invite comments or questions. If there's something you want me to mention, I can. And we're still recording. So if you don't want to be recorded, I'll bet you can ask a request. Actually, we do have a microphone. Yes, okay. Okay.
I can start. I used to be your housemate, Sean Gershevsky.
This is Sean.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So
I went,
used to
you
live in
waved
Shogo.
at me, but the hat fooled
Yeah,
me.
we used to live in Shogun's house right behind the Zen Center.
Yeah.
And you got me into Shantideva with the Bodhisattva's way of life.
Wait, that wasn't me.
Oh, that wasn't you?
I'm sorry. I never lived with Shokin, so it can't have been me. Sorry.
Well, you would visit our house a lot.
I visited your house,
Yeah, you
yes.
visited the house, and then you also gave me the book about the cook, the Zen cooking book.
Yeah.
How to be mindful in the kitchen and
Tanso
things.
Kyoku, there's beautiful stuff in there.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's very sweet to see you, and I haven't gotten down to see your land down there, but my adventure on this pathway is to go to my dad's village in Poland in April. I'm going with my cousin Angelica, who is studying the pre-Christian Slavic water rituals. Wow. And it's just wonderful to see how people would talk with the earth and with plants. And so it's interesting. My dad's village is now in this big natural wildlife area with a bird migratory area, and the wolves have come back and everything. And so anyway, I feel grateful that we can all find our way back to being gentler, kinder people. And it is very hard to have the more military situation coming into our community with ice and everything. And my dad's village was burned down during World War I. So we have enough peace that we can recover our connectedness with the earth and each other. So anyway, very good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I needed you without the hat. Yeah. Oh.
Thank you. Something you actually didn't talk about, and I'm curious if you have practice or experience to share on, I guess, tending to our relationships and community. I guess both with non-human kin or more than human kin, but I think maybe the most difficult ones tend to be with human kin. And yeah, I think a lot of the projects or activism or organizing or culture change or, that I appreciated Joanna Macy's, the three areas of that work, but in all areas of that work, I feel like what I've felt kind of the most despair around or the most just difficulty with has been when it feels like the fabric is coming apart because of conflict that we seemingly don't know how to tend to. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious if you would like to share anything on that.
I can talk about it. It's something I'm really bad at. And I'm working on it, but people who have like opposite thoughts and are full of hate, I'm like, let me put my energy somewhere else. Now, I know there are people who have done that. There's a black man who has sat down with Ku Klux Klan leaders, and they wind up he's got a whole closet full of Klan uniforms that come from people who gave it up. I don't remember the name. I read about it some years ago. So what some people say is that the thing to do is not to talk about politics, but to be present in the community. And so if you're one of the people who's, delivering meals to the elderly, or is a library volunteer, or who offers a hand to your neighbors, whether you like them or not, or who is, routinely a volunteer at whatever, it's the library, the art place, the church, what have you. Churches tend to run, they don't have extreme differences. People usually find someplace that's more comfortable. I remember when I was in transition Bloomington, and I was in transition Northfield for a while. Bloomington was in Indiana. And we made an attempt to get people together in groups that were by topic rather than by political preference. So there was a group that was about transportation. Just let's have the transition towns are about having a town that will function if we don't have all this infrastructure that we think is likely to go away and that needs to go away because it's destroying us. Now, the thing is, I don't know super successful examples, you know. But I do know, I spent some nice summers volunteering at, what was that farm? And I know there's makerspace in Dundas. A couple of people donated their tools, and now the place is open, and they have classes, and people can go together, and people can do things together. And so there's this sort of civic engagement thing. And even if, you know, if you work the polls, which apparently in some places being a little dangerous now, but basically it's a fundamental civic activity, and you just say hello to everybody who comes by. That kind of activity is builds community. Sure, yeah. Oops.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm also curious about when it feels like the unraveling is happening, like in our close relationships. And I think my sort of questioning or experimentation in my personal life at this time around this is around, like, what is the process of discernment in sorting out where to share hurt with someone we're in relationship with? And when do we care for it on our own? And when do we kind of just keep showing up to relationship and waiting for the water to go under the bridge? And when do we enter into that kind of intentional conflict space? Because I see in my own life, and I think I see in the lives of people around me, sort of an imbalance between a desire to fix everything all the time and process, and it doesn't really work out, and then also an avoidance, and we never talk about it, and things kind of grow cold.
Right.
And I kind of see in my community and in myself, in my own life, kind of both sides of that. So I see that as a obstacle in weaving our culture together. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an obstacle. This is, I mean, you've named the problem really well. And the answer is not always to tell, and it's not always to be quiet, but there has to be some way of being human together. Okay, I'm thinking of an example of a husband who had done great harm to his wife, and she didn't know. And he was dying, or he could see it coming anyway. And he felt the need to tell her. And she said, "Don't tell me." but he told her. And I think she stopped wanting to die. But she kept hoping to die for a very long time after that. Because he had, in doing that, he had destroyed everything that was of value in their entire life. And, yeah. So it's definitely you don't always tell, but you can't always keep quiet. And maybe if they'd had a therapist before that, maybe they could have worked their way together. Because people help each other do that. And knowing how it works is the job of a therapist. So that's something. Okay. So I thought of something that I haven't said yet. I think we're almost done, but I'm going to tell you this thing. As I talked about reclaiming human nature, there's something that we were taught, probably whatever generation we are, about how human society evolves, and it evolves from hunter-gatherers and into agriculture, and then it gets bigger, and then you need to have kings and chiefs and storage places, and then you need to have armies and so forth. So I've been telling a story, and today I looked it up, and it wasn't one story, but the story is of a place in what is now Ukraine that is an example of many megasites around the world. And they call them megasites because they think a city should have like fortifications and places to store the grain and a military and a king and a palace and all that stuff. But in these places, there are, it said what size the houses were. There are a bunch of houses that were about the same size. Was it 30 by 60? That might be too large. But, they were moderate houses. They were around a central open space. Nobody can quite figure out what they did with the open space. It's not set up, or the archaeologists can't find any evidence. They're not mining the rural areas for minerals or for trees or for crops or for animals. They're having little gardens. Everybody is having a little garden, and some of them are keeping sheep or cows or chicken. And there's no evidence of violence. Now, just imagine, I need to reread the entire chapter again because this is so hard for me to imagine, because I was so vigorously taught that where you have large numbers of people, you're going to have conflict and you're not going to be able to make decisions. And it's not true. It is not true. There's lots of evidence, lots of history on several continents. So there. Be encouraged. And of course, the fact that we can see the changes happening. If you think of what you've read lately, or what you've maybe listened to, or what's been offered to you as a free podcast, there's something is changing. Indigenous wisdom is being followed more, still by a minority of people, but it's like that's how it works. Some people are chanting metta every Monday together. Spiritual practice matters. Okay. Yeah.
Next, quick announcements. Thank you so much, Shodo. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Here at Common Ground, we offer all of our programs freely under the practice of Dana. And so we invite you all, thank you for joining us tonight. If you'd like to support Shodo and her work, there's a couple ways to give money. I will drop a link in the chat on Zoom. And for folks here at the center, there is a donation bowl for cash and check, or I can help you with an electronic payment. So please just find me after. 2/3 of the donations that are received tonight will go to support Shodo and her work, and 1/3 will go to support the center. So, and I want to just make 2 quick announcements for sessions that are coming up here at the center and at the retreat center. Actually, both of these are at the retreat center in Prairie Farm, Wisconsin, about 75 minutes away. On Thursday, January 29th to Sunday, February 1st, there will be a residential retreat with Win Fricke on the cultivation of samadhi and the unification of mind. And the second one is the President's Day retreat with Mark Nunberg and Shelley Graff. That will be Thursday, February 12th to Monday, November 16th. You can find information on both those programs and more online on the calendar at the website. And with that, I'll leave you. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
I have books, and you can buy them from me. Cash is good. The basic book is $19.95, and I have some copies that have typos that are $10. I have just a few of those left.